Princess Nara stood in the center of the crystal war room, her silver scales catching the light from the massive viewing window. Beyond the transparent wall, the blue planet Earth hung in space like a precious jewel. Today would change everything between the Vex Empire and humanity. After 20 years of border conflicts and mistrust, both species had finally agreed to meet for peace talks. The crystalline walls of her flagship hummed with energy as the human delegation's shuttle approached. Nara's advisors moved around her, their scaled faces serious as they prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in their history. Admiral Cross, her chief military advisor, watched the approaching shuttle with suspicious golden eyes. "Princess, remember that humans are known for their deception," Cross warned, his voice a low rumble. "Their small size makes them appear weak, but they fight like cornered beasts when threatened." Nara nodded but said nothing. She had her own thoughts about humans, thoughts she had never shared with anyone in the Vex Empire. Her hands trembled slightly as she watched the shuttle dock with their ship. Something deep in her heart told her this day would be different from what anyone expected. The massive doors to the war room opened with a soft hiss. The human delegation entered slowly, their movements careful and respectful. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried no visible weapons. The lead human still wore his helmet, hiding his face behind dark glass. "I am Princess Nara of the Vex Empire," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of royal blood. "I welcome you to our ship in the hope of finding peace between our peoples." The lead human stepped forward and reached up to remove his helmet. As the protective gear came away, Nara's breath caught in her throat. Time seemed to freeze as she stared at the face revealed before her. Kind brown eyes looked back at her. Hair that had once been golden was now touched with gray at the edges. The face was older, marked by years and experience, but she would know those gentle features anywhere. It was impossible yet undeniably real. "Ben," she whispered, the human name strange on her lips after so many years. The human delegation looked confused, but the man named Ben stepped forward, his eyes wide with growing recognition. He studied her face carefully, taking in her silver scales and the royal markings that adorned her forehead. "It cannot be," Ben said softly. "Little Star?" Nara's heart pounded as she heard the nickname he had given her 20 years ago. In that moment, she was no longer the mighty princess of the Vex Empire. She was a frightened 7-year-old child again, lost and alone on a strange world. The memory came flooding back with perfect clarity. 20 years earlier, young Princess Nara had been traveling with her mother, the Queen, on a diplomatic mission to the outer colonies. Their shuttle had experienced a catastrophic engine failure while passing near the human colony world of Haven. The ship crashed in the wilderness, far from any Vex settlements. Nara had awakened to find herself alone among the twisted metal of the destroyed shuttle. Her mother was gone along with all the royal guards. Fire burned around her, and strange sounds echoed through the alien forest. She was hurt, scared, and completely lost on a world where her own people were considered monsters by the local inhabitants. For hours, she wandered through the dark woods, her small body shaking with fear and pain. When human search teams finally found the crash site, they saw only the burned wreckage and assumed there were no survivors. But one young human medic had heard her crying. Ben was only 19 then, fresh from medical training and serving his first assignment on Haven Colony. When he found the small alien child hiding in the wreckage, his first thought was not of the danger she might represent. Instead, he saw only a hurt and frightened little being who needed help. Most humans would have called for the military immediately. The Vex were known to be fierce warriors, and even their children were considered potentially dangerous. But Ben had looked into Nara's large, frightened eyes and seen something that transcended species boundaries. He saw a child in need. "Hey there, little one," he had said softly, kneeling down to her level. "You're hurt, aren't you? Let me help you." Nara had been too scared and hurt to run. When Ben reached out his hand, she took it with trembling fingers. His skin was warm and soft, nothing like the rough, scaled hands of her own people. Ben had hidden her in an abandoned storage building on the edge of the colony. For 3 days, he brought her food and medical supplies, treating her injuries with gentle care. He never asked her name or where she came from. Instead, he simply called her Little Star because of the way her silver scales caught the light. "Why are you helping me?" Nara had asked him on the second day, her young voice struggling with the human language. Ben had smiled, that same kind smile she now saw across the war room. Because you need help and I can give it. That's what good people do, little star. We help each other. On the third day, Vex rescue ships had arrived, their powerful sensors finally locating the crash site. Nara remembered standing at the edge of the forest, looking back at the human colony one last time. Ben had given her a small piece of metal from his medical kit as a memento. Remember, little star, he had said, kindness is the greatest strength any being can have. Now, 20 years later, Princess Nara reached into a hidden pocket of her royal robes and pulled out that same piece of metal. She had carried it with her every day since that moment, a reminder of the human who had shown her that compassion could exist between even the most different species. Ben's eyes widened as he recognized the small medical tool. You kept it all these years? It reminded me that not all humans are the monsters my people believed them to be, Nara replied. Just as I hope I showed you that not all Vex are the savage beasts your people fear. The rest of both delegations watched in amazement, as the princess of a mighty empire and a simple human diplomat shared this impossible reunion. Admiral Cross stepped forward, his voice sharp with suspicion. Princess, what is the meaning of this? How do you know this human? Nara straightened, remembering her position and responsibilities. Admiral, this human saved my life when I was a child. He showed me kindness when he could have turned me over to his military. Because of his actions, I learned that peace between our species was possible. Ben turned to his own delegation, his voice filled with wonder. This is why I became a diplomat. That encounter with Little Star changed my entire view of alien life. I dedicated my career to building bridges between species because of what I learned from her. Admiral Cross looked unconvinced. A convenient story. How do we know this is not some human trick? Before Nara could respond, Ben stepped forward and began to speak in perfect Vex language, his pronunciation careful but accurate. Your princess has a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left shoulder. She was afraid of the dark and slept with a small crystal light. Her favorite food was honey cakes, and she hummed a lullaby her mother sang to her when she was scared. The war room fell silent. Only someone who had spent intimate time with the young princess could know such personal details. Admiral Cross's suspicion faded, replaced by amazement. How do you know our language? Nara asked, equally surprised. Ben smiled. I spent the last 20 years learning everything I could about Vex culture. I hoped that someday I might see you again and be able to speak with you properly. I became a xenobiologist first, then a diplomat, all because a little alien girl taught me that understanding between species was possible. Princess Nara felt tears forming in her eyes, the unusual display of emotion for a Vex royal. You shaped who I became as well, Ben. When I took my place in the Royal Council, I always argued for peaceful contact with humans. My advisors thought I was too soft, too idealistic. If they only knew the truth. What truth? Admiral Cross asked, his voice now curious rather than suspicious. That a human taught me the most important lesson of my life, Nara replied. He showed me that true strength comes from protecting those who are weaker, not from conquering them. Every decision I have made as a leader has been guided by that principle. Ben's delegation looked equally amazed. Dr. Sarah Chen, the team's lead scientist, spoke up. Ambassador Ben, you never told us the real reason you specialized in Vex studies. I thought no one would believe me, Ben admitted. A chance encounter with an alien child seemed too simple, too small to be the foundation for a diplomatic career. But sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest changes. As the two groups began to process this remarkable revelation, Princess Nara felt a lightness in her heart she had not experienced in years. The peace negotiations that had seemed so formal and difficult now felt like a reunion between old friends. Perhaps, she said to Ben, we should begin these talks by sharing what we learned from each other all those years ago. You taught me about human compassion. What did you learn from me? Ben thought for a moment, then smiled. You taught me that courage comes in many forms. You were just a child, hurt and alone on a hostile world, but you never stopped hoping that someone would help you. That hope, that refusal to give up even in the darkest moment, that is something uniquely powerful about your people. Admiral Cross listened to these words with growing interest. The humans see hope as one of our strengths? The greatest strength, Ben confirmed. Your people have faced extinction multiple times throughout your history, yet you always found a way to survive and grow stronger. That resilience, combined with your loyalty to family and clan, makes the Vex Empire one of the most remarkable civilizations in the galaxy. Princess Nara felt pride swell in her chest, but it was different from the cold pride of conquest her people usually valued. This was the warm pride of being truly understood and appreciated. "Then let us begin these negotiations with hope," she declared. "If a human child and a Vex child could find friendship across the void of space and species, surely our peoples can find peace." The formal negotiations began with an atmosphere of warmth and possibility that surprised everyone present. As they discussed trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and cultural exchange programs, both Princess Nara and Ambassador Ben found themselves thinking of that small storage building on Haven Colony, where the seeds of this moment had been planted 20 years ago. But their reunion was about to be interrupted in the most dangerous way possible. As the day wore on, and progress was made on several key issues, emergency alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the crystal walls, and the steady hum of the ship's engines changed to an urgent, pulsing rhythm. Admiral Cross immediately moved to a communication panel, his face darkening as he received reports from across the fleet. "Princess, we have a problem. Several ships in our fleet are no longer responding to Central Command. Someone has taken control of the orbital defense platforms around the human colony worlds." Princess Nara's blood turned cold. "Who would dare?" "Commander Vex, your cousin has declared you unfit to rule," Admiral Cross reported, his voice grim. "He claims you have been corrupted by human influence and are betraying the Empire. His faction has seized control of key ships and weapons systems." Ben stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite the personal connection. "What does this mean for the colonies below?" Admiral Cross looked at the human delegation with something approaching respect. "Commander Vex plans to use the orbital platforms to destroy all human settlements in this system. He believes that eliminating human civilization will strengthen the Empire and prove that peace negotiations were a mistake." Princess Nara felt the weight of millions of lives settling on her shoulders. Everything she had worked for, everything Ben had inspired her to become, was about to be destroyed by the very people she had tried to lead toward a better future. "We have to stop him," she said, her voice filled with determination. But even as she spoke, armed Vex soldiers entered the war room, their weapons trained on both delegations. These were not her loyal guards, but members of Commander Vex's faction. "Princess Nara," their leader announced, "you are under arrest for treason against the Vex Empire. The human delegation will be held as prisoners of war." As the soldiers moved to surround them, Princess Nara caught Ben's eye. In that look, she saw the same determination that had driven him to help a lost alien child 20 years ago. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The stage was set for the most important battle of their lives, with the fate of two entire species hanging in the balance. The Vex soldiers moved closer, their energy weapons glowing with dangerous light. Princess Nara counted 8 soldiers in the war room, all wearing the black armor of Commander Vex's elite forces. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Captain Mex, stepped forward with a cruel smile. "Princess, your cousin sends his regards," Captain Mex said, his voice filled with mock respect. "He regrets that your human friends will not live to see another sunrise." Ben remained calm despite the weapons pointed at him. Years of diplomatic training had taught him to stay steady in dangerous situations. He watched Princess Nara carefully, waiting for any sign of what she planned to do. "My cousin is making a terrible mistake," Princess Nara replied, her royal authority clear in every word. "These humans came here in peace. Attacking them will start a war that will destroy both our peoples." Captain Mex laughed harshly. "War is what the Vex Empire was built for, Princess. Your soft heart has made you forget that we are warriors, not diplomats." Admiral Cross, still loyal to the princess, stepped forward. "Captain, you are making a grave error. Princess Nara is the rightful ruler of this fleet." "Not anymore," Captain Mex replied. "Commander Vex has proof that the princess has been compromised by human influence. Look how she greets this human like an old friend. She has forgotten her duty to her own people." Ben could see the anger building in Princess Nara's eyes. Her silver scales were beginning to darken, a sign that her Vex warrior instincts were awakening. He remembered from his studies that angry Vex could be incredibly dangerous, but he also knew that violence would only make the situation worse. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "perhaps we can discuss this situation calmly. No one needs to be hurt today." Silence, human, Captain Mex snapped. You have already done enough damage to our princess. Your species is a disease that must be removed from the galaxy. At that moment, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Commander Vex's voice filled the war room, cold and filled with hatred. Citizens of the Vex Empire, today marks a new beginning for our people. For too long, we have allowed weak leaders to consider peace with inferior species. Today, we reclaim our strength. Princess Nara closed her eyes, knowing what was coming next. The human colonies in this system will be destroyed as an example to all who would challenge Vex supremacy. Their destruction will prove that mercy is weakness, and only through strength can our empire grow. Ben felt his heart sink as he thought of the millions of innocent people on the planets below. Families, children, scientists, artists, all would die because of one Vex commander's hatred. The orbital bombardment will begin in 1 hour, Commander Vex continued. Princess Nara's biometric codes are required to unlock the final firing sequence. Once she provides them, willing or not, the human infection will be burned from these worlds forever. The communication ended, leaving the war room in tense silence. Captain Mex smiled with satisfaction. You see, Princess? Your cousin needs your royal codes to complete his plan. You can cooperate and make this easy, or we can force you to comply. Princess Nara straightened to her full height, her royal bearing magnificent even in defeat. I will never give you those codes. I would rather die than allow the murder of innocent people. That can be arranged, Captain Mex said, raising his weapon. But first you will watch as we question your human friends. Perhaps their screams will change your mind. Ben stepped protectively in front of the other human diplomats. Leave them out of this. If you want to hurt someone, hurt me. How noble, Captain Mex mocked. The humans show the same weakness as our corrupted princess. Admiral Cross had been quietly working at his command console during this exchange. Suddenly he looked up with alarm. Captain, we have a problem. Several of the princess's loyal guards are fighting their way toward this section. They are trying to rescue her. Captain Mex cursed in the old Vex language. Take the prisoners to the secure holding area. We will continue this discussion there. The soldiers moved to surround both delegations, but Princess Nara had been watching and waiting for her moment. As Captain Mex turned to give orders to his troops, she struck with the lightning speed that made Vex warriors legendary throughout the galaxy. Her scaled fist connected with the nearest soldier's jaw, sending him crashing into the crystal wall. Before the others could react, she grabbed his fallen weapon and rolled behind a control console. Ben, this way, she shouted, firing energy blasts to keep the soldiers back. Ben grabbed Dr. Chen and pushed her toward the emergency exit that Princess Nara was covering. Admiral Cross, seeing his chance, tackled another soldier and seized his weapon as well. The war room erupted into chaos. Energy blasts filled the air as Princess Nara and Admiral Cross fought desperately to clear a path to the exit. Ben helped the other human diplomats reach the corridor while the Vex soldiers scrambled for cover. The maintenance tunnels, Admiral Cross shouted over the noise of battle. We can reach the emergency command center through the lower decks. Princess Nara fired one last covering blast and then sprinted for the exit. Move, we do not have much time. The group raced through the crystalline corridors of the massive ship. Behind them, alarm bells rang throughout the vessel as Captain Mex called for reinforcements. Emergency barriers began sealing sections of the ship, but Princess Nara knew the override codes for most of them. This way, she called, leading them down a narrow maintenance passage. The emergency command center has independent access to all ship systems. If we can reach it, we might be able to stop the orbital bombardment. Ben ran beside her, his heart pounding from more than just the physical exertion. Nara, what exactly do these biometric codes do? They are the final safety system, she explained as they climbed through a vertical shaft. The orbital weapons cannot fire on populated worlds without confirmation from royal blood. It was designed to prevent accidents or unauthorized attacks. Dr. Chen, breathing hard from the chase, asked the question they were all thinking. What happens if you die before giving the codes? Princess Nara paused at an intersection, checking for enemy soldiers before answering. The system locks down for 72 hours. It gives time for the Royal Council to investigate and choose a new heir. Ben stopped suddenly, an idea forming in his mind. Nara, what if the sensors think you are dead? Would that trigger the lockdown? Yes, but Ben, I would actually have to die. The biometric scanners read heartbeat, brain activity, everything. They cannot be fooled by simple tricks. Maybe they can, Ben said, his voice filled with growing excitement. Do you remember when I treated you as a child? I had to use a neural suppression field to reduce your pain while your bones healed. Princess Nara nodded, wondering where he was going with this. Vex physiology responds differently to neural suppression than human physiology. Ben continued. If I can create a strong enough field, I might be able to temporarily suppress all your vital signs. The sensors would read you as dead, but you would actually be in a kind of deep hibernation. Admiral Cross looked skeptical. Human, that sounds extremely dangerous. What if something goes wrong? Then we lose one life instead of millions, Ben replied simply. It is worth the risk. Princess Nara studied his face, seeing the same determination that had driven him to help her 20 years ago. How long would I be unconscious? At least an hour, maybe more. And Ben, what about you? Managing a neural suppression field of that strength could kill you. Ben smiled, the same gentle smile she remembered from her childhood. Little star, some things are worth any risk. You taught me that courage means protecting others even when you are afraid. They reached the emergency command center just as enemy soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor. Admiral Cross held them off with covering fire while Princess Nara and Ben worked frantically at the control systems. I can access the biometric scanners from here, Princess Nara said, her fingers flying over the crystal interface. But we need a neural suppression device. Ben was already pulling apart a medical emergency kit mounted on the wall. These portable medical units have basic neural field generators. I can modify one to work, but it will be crude and dangerous. How dangerous? Admiral Cross asked, still firing at their pursuers. For Nara, probably survivable if everything goes right, Ben admitted. For me, maintaining the connection to keep her stable will likely cause permanent brain damage or death. Princess Nara grabbed his arm, her scaled fingers gentle but firm. Ben, I cannot ask you to sacrifice yourself for my people. You are not asking, Ben replied, working quickly to rewire the medical device. I am choosing. Just like I chose to help a scared little girl 20 years ago. Dr. Chen had been monitoring their enemy's approach. Whatever we are going to do, it has to be now. They are breaking through Admiral Cross's position. Ben finished his modifications and looked at Princess Nara. Are you ready, little star? She nodded, lying down on the medical platform. Ben, if this works and you survive, tell my people what you told me as a child. Tell them that kindness is the greatest strength any being can have. Ben activated the neural suppression field, and Princess Nara's eyes closed immediately. Her breathing slowed, then stopped entirely. All the vital signs monitors went dark. Throughout the ship, emergency alarms began sounding as the biometric system registered the death of the royal heir. The orbital weapons platforms automatically entered lockdown mode, their targeting systems powering down. But Ben did not release the neural field. He kept the connection active, monitoring Princess Nara's suspended biological functions with instruments that showed she was still alive, just barely. Sweat poured down his face as the strain of maintaining the field took its toll on his own nervous system. Commander Vex's voice roared over the communication system. What happened? Why have the weapons shut down? Captain Mex and his soldiers burst into the command center, but they were too late. The biometric scanners clearly showed that Princess Nara was dead, triggering the 72-hour lockdown that would give the Royal Council time to investigate. You fools, Commander Vex screamed through the communicator. Find another way to override the system. There is no other way, Admiral Cross said with satisfaction. The royal bloodline safeguards cannot be bypassed. Your coup has failed. Captain Mex looked at Ben, who was still connected to the neural suppression device, his face pale with exhaustion. What is the human doing? Dr. Chen stepped forward protectively. He is maintaining her life support. If you interrupt the process, she will actually die. For the next hour, Ben fought to keep Princess Nara alive while his own strength faded. Dr. Chen monitored his vital signs, watching with growing alarm as his brain activity became increasingly unstable. Finally, loyal Vex forces retook the ship. Commander Vex was arrested, and his supporters surrendered when faced with the overwhelming force of the royal fleet. Captain Mex and his soldiers were taken into custody. As the crisis ended, Ben carefully began reducing the neural suppression field. Princess Nara's breathing returned first, then her heartbeat. Slowly, her silver scales began to brighten as consciousness returned. When her eyes opened, the first thing she saw was Ben collapsed beside the medical platform, unconscious but alive. Dr. Chen was working frantically to stabilize his condition. Is he going to survive? Princess Nara asked weakly. I think so, Dr. Chen replied, but he suffered significant neural trauma. It may take weeks for him to fully recover. Princess Nara struggled to sit up, her body still weak from the suppression field. He saved millions of lives today, both human and Vex. Admiral Cross approached with a communication device. Princess, the Royal Council on the homeworld wishes to speak with you. News of the attempted coup has reached them. Princess Nara took the device, her voice still shaky but filled with determination. Council members, what happened here today proves that peace with humanity is not only possible, but necessary. A human diplomat risked his life to save our people from the actions of our own extremists. Over the following days, as Ben slowly recovered, the peace negotiations resumed with new energy and purpose. The story of what happened spread throughout both the Vex Empire and human space. A Vex princess and a human diplomat, connected by a childhood encounter, had prevented a war that could have destroyed both civilizations. When Ben finally awakened, he found Princess Nara sitting beside his medical bed, holding the small piece of metal he had given her 20 years ago. You kept your promise, she said softly. You showed me that kindness is the greatest strength. Ben smiled weakly. And you showed me that hope and courage can overcome any obstacle. The peace treaty was signed 1 week later in a ceremony that was broadcast across both empires. Princess Nara and Ambassador Ben signed the document side by side, their hands touching as they wrote their names. In her speech to the combined delegations, Princess Nara announced a new tradition. Every year on this date, both species would celebrate the Day of Kindness, remembering that small acts of compassion can change the course of history. Ambassador Ben was granted permanent residence in the Vex Empire, becoming the first human to serve as a cultural exchange coordinator between the species. Princess Nara reformed the Vex military doctrine, changing it from conquest to protection, modeling her leadership after the gentle strength Ben had shown her as a child. Years later, when asked about the secret to peace between their peoples, Princess Nara would always give the same answer. It began with a human who saw a scared alien child and chose to help instead of turning away. That choice saved not just one little girl, but 2 entire civilizations. The story of the alien princess and the human who saved her became legend in both cultures, proof that even the smallest acts of kindness can grow into something greater than anyone could imagine. Ben and Princess Nara remained close friends for the rest of their lives, their childhood bond having grown into something that brought peace to the stars. In the end, they had both kept the promises they made in that storage building on Haven Colony. Ben had shown that kindness was indeed the greatest strength, and Princess Nara had proven that hope and courage could overcome even the darkest of times. The galaxy was a better place because a human child had chosen compassion over fear, and an alien princess had chosen to remember that lesson when it mattered most.